I don't think that we make good decisions. I remember when the China syndrome came out and we had 3 Mile Island and everybody decided, okay, that's it for nuclear. And I thought, okay, maybe that's it for nuclear, but I don't think it's smart to make that decision on the basis of a movie.
Well, you were right then, as a matter of fact, because nuclear now has much more currency.
It does.
Around the world.
Right.
Global warming.
How about that?
How about that? You seem. But tell me what you did and how you, I know, but tell me how you came to the conclusions, and have you changed your conclusions with new evidence? Just so we put on record what exactly you believed and said, rather than what we think you said.
What people are saying is really not true, even though at the end of that book I thought, people aren't going to understand this, so I'll write it in simple declarative sentences, and still people misstate it. What I said was, the Earth is definitely getting warmer. It's gotten, somewhere in the neighborhood of 6 or 7/10 of a degree Celsius warmer in the last 100 years. We are increasing the amount of carbon dioxide in the atmosphere. It's increased 30% in the last century. We
meaning humans, are doing this.
We human beings, yes. Carbon dioxide is a greenhouse gas. We would expect a 30% increase to have some influence on temperature. We're also doing lots of other things that affect the temperature as it's measured in a global temperature reading. So we're, cutting down the forests and doing croplands and all of that. What's basically called land use changes, or the urban heat island effect also has an effect, whether that's compensated for adequately in the way they do these calculations or not. And I said, my conclusion is that we will have 0.8 of a degree warming increase in the next 100 years. So I absolutely believe that warming is occurring, humans are involved, and where it's going to continue for the next 100 years.
Then what did you say that got everybody so upset at you?
I'm not a catastrophist. And I said one other thing too. I said, I think it is not likely that carbon dioxide is going to prove to be the primary driver.
What do you think will be the primary driver?
I think the sun, and I think there are miscalculations from urban land use, generally speaking.
Okay, now, and I'm sure you read every sentence of this new report by the UN that came out of Paris. Yes?
I haven't, actually, because I don't read the summary for policymakers. I read what the scientists say, not what the politicians say.
Tell me if I'm wrong. Every good scientist that I talk to says to me, 90% of the scientists agree on this.
I don't know what the percentage is, but I would...
I mean, it's the lone exception out there, and everybody says you ought to listen to them, and we do, and I've talked to them, but most of the scientists say we all agree on this, that it is catastrophic, that in fact, if the ice sheet melts, if the ice sheet melts,
that's not true. They don't say that.
Scientists don't say that?
Not everybody. No,
I didn't say everybody. I said scientists say to me, the majority of us agree with this. We agree that if, in fact, nothing's done about carbon dioxide in the air, carbon in the air, that, in fact, you're going to have these incredible things that we can see the beginnings of now, in which the ice sheet melts and it affects the weather and everything else. Tell me what's wrong about this. Oh, I know. You're bored by this or what?
Well, it's a lot of the people who talk about it, and I don't know who you're thinking of specifically, don't actually know very much. And I'm sympathetic to that, because for a long time I said, oh yes, global warming, it's a terrible problem, blah, blah, blah. And only when I went and looked at the figures, I thought, wait a minute, tell me again why this is a catastrophe. I see that it's something that's happening. I see that it's important. If you talk to Jesse Ausubel at Rockefeller University, he'll tell you we've been decarbonizing since the days of Abraham Lincoln and Queen Elizabeth, and we're going to continue to decarbonize. So whether or not this is going to happen fast enough for some people, it's a long-term 150-year trend. It's going to continue. You can't get agreement on almost anything, as far as I can tell. I mean, you can bring in 5 guys to talk about whether Antarctica, the core of Antarctica, is getting colder or not. Everybody agrees the peninsula, which is 2% of the mass, is getting warmer. And, they'll argue and argue and argue, and you'll come away after an hour saying, I don't know what the answer is, and that's the reality. Nobody really knows that. But what I said in my book, and I defy anybody to tell me I'm wrong, is I said nobody knows how fast it's going to get warmer, and nobody knows for sure what the various contributions of warming are. And I've predicted 0.8 of a degree, and nobody knows that I'm wrong.
And nothing has happened since you wrote that book to change your mind about your conclusions?
No. And what I do, I went to Germany in 2005, and it was a very hostile environment, and I gave a speech which consisted only of what was then the latest UN document, the third assessment report. And I put these graphs up, and I said to them, look, this is what they're saying. Is this okay with you? The audience got phenomenally silent. Because if you really start to say, okay, how do you validate the models? How is it done? Oh, we do it. There's a personal component of assessment. Well, really? Well, that's not okay for a drug. It's not okay for the maker to self-validate. We don't believe that. We don't think that's acceptable. It has to be done by somebody outside. We're talking about, if you listen to Bjorn Lomborg, $558 trillion globally to make this change. I think it's a good change to make. I think we will make it naturally. I think there's a lot of reasons to make it. I'm in favor of making it. The question is whether we should do it as a crash program for $558 trillion. And the notion of spending that money without really validating the bejesus out of the data is very bizarre to me. I mean, let me put it to you this way. If global warming was a company, you couldn't buy it because they won't let you do due diligence. They won't let you look at the figures.
They being?
The scientists who do the global mean.
Okay, but let me ask this question.
Yeah.
Do you disagree with the idea that the majority of scientists who are experts in this area have a different conclusion than you?
I don't know the answer to that, and I'll tell you why. Hans von Storch does a poll of scientists every few years, and he asked them in 2003, so it's a while ago now, he said, are you totally convinced that human beings are the primary cause of the warming that you see? Are you largely convinced? Are you somewhat convinced? It was one of those five.
Right. This came out of the UN report, too. Those kinds of words.
Right. But he asked people to really do it, and it's a secret ballot. The number of people who were totally convinced, as opposed to largely convinced or partially convinced, I was very surprised. It was 9.4%.
Only 9% of the people are totally convinced.
Yeah, under 10.
What about what's the next step up then? Totally convinced too.
Oh, the majority are believe
convinced,
that this
but
is
not totally convinced, or it's likely but not.
Let's move a little bit. What are you going to do about it?
The UN people said. I mean, I find it a little bit difficult to have a conversation. I mean, I don't mean to have a conversation. I find it easy to have a conversation with you, but to talk when you dismiss the UN people and all that they're getting.
These are bureaucrats. I'm interested in what the scientists say.
Okay, but that's not true, Michael. They
Yes,
weren't
it
just
is.
bureaucrats.
Yes, it is.
The scientists didn't come and testify.
No,
Scientists weren't involved in the publication of that at all. Scientists had nothing to do with that report.
I don't think so.
I think so.
Really?
I do.
Maybe only a few heads of the various sections, but the reality is you have to go and look at the scientific basis, that report, which will be 700-odd pages, and if you compare, for example, the 2001 paper, if you compare the summary for policymakers with what is said in the third assessment report, it bears very little relationship. It's far more confident. It has almost no detail about why somebody would say, wait a minute. There are reasons to say, wait a minute.
Now, do you have a reason to why you think that the perception of this is not as bad as it is? I mean, in other words, you believe it's not as bad as it is. Based on your reading of the data, you think, yes, we're getting warmer, but it's not going to lead to the catastrophe. That's what you just said.
Right.
Do you have a reason that that's not the common perception? That it is going to lead to a catastrophe unless we do something? Unless we do something about the amount of fossil fuel
Right.
we put in the air, unless
Okay.
we have some kind of carbon index, unless we get serious about this, it is going to be a catastrophe.
Okay. First thing I want to say to you is I'm not stopping anybody from doing any of this.
Right.
And I don't want to be blamed
Yes, I know.
for the notion that, the Congress isn't going to pass the Kyoto Protocol or something like that. But I think the answer is that whenever you have something that's untied to the data, and when you have people adopting essentially philosophical positions, emotional positions, which the environment tremendously invites, how I feel as I walk through the woods and how I feel as I see clear cutting or something like that, very often from people who really don't understand these issues at all, then it's a very easy thing for an attitude to move in the direction of increasing demand or increasing hysteria or increasing concern, whether or not that's appropriate or not. And you can see these movements take over science. When I was a young person, every project, every grant proposal had to be to cure cancer, because it was Lyndon Johnson's war on cancer, and there was no point. I mean, if you wanted to propose something, you had to find a way to say, well, this is going to help cure cancer, true or not.
Rather than diabetes or something else.
Right. I mean, you couldn't just be doing basic research. Right. So I understand that these ideas can take hold, and I understand that generally speaking, the more extreme elements will push that, and the media is not interested in a balanced perspective.
I am.
Okay. But you're very rare.
Well, just am.
And that's the truth.
Yeah. Well, Al Gore.
I like him very much.
What do
He's
you think
wrong
of his
on this
movie?
issue.
He's wrong?
He's wrong on this issue. That's my opinion.
How is he wrong?
I like him a lot. I'm very fond of him.
Yeah.
Wish
he'd been
done
president?
some things.
Wish
yeah.
he'd been president?
Yes, he's done some things.
Was that a yes to wish he'd been president?
I don't look back.
Oh, that's a cop-out.
It's not. I don't know how, given what we
Would
know
you rather have
has
seen
happened,
George Bush or Al Gore elected when they ran against each other in the year 2000?
I like Al Gore.
Okay. That's, there's nothing to be gained by trying to say yes or no.
I like him a lot.
Okay, I hear you. And respect his intelligence, respect his commitment to this issue,
Yes.
respect the book he wrote on the earth, the globe, whatever it was. Yes.
Yes.
Now he's made a movie,
Yes.
Inconvenient Truth.
Yes.
And you say about what he says in that movie, what?
If I wanted to make a movie that said what he said, I could make a much better movie. There are a lot of things in that movie that are dicey and there's a lot that.
Okay, but let's just tell me what there is in that movie that's not dicey, but wrong.
Okay. Kilimanjaro, as an example of global warming, is wrong. 20-foot increase in sea levels or 40-foot increases, whatever it is now, is wrong. And I think actually attitudinally it's wrong. I think that, the notion that this is a spiritual or religious issue for us is wrong. It is a scientific matter that we need to look at with as dispassionate a way of seeing it as possible. And if we don't do that, we're just expressing rank prejudices.
So Al Gore's movie and book express rank prejudices.
That's my view, sure. I mean, he's making arguments. I mean, I love the guy. He's making arguments for which there is no data. There just isn't. And he's got these fabulous pictures of the United States being inundated and I had somebody call me up who'd seen it and said, wow, I know you live at the beach sometimes and I have a beach house and, kiss them goodbye. I don't think so. The UN, and by the way, the new UN report, which you're so fond of, says 38 centimeter increase. Well, 38 centimeters is a foot? What?
Fond of would not be the way I would characterize what I said. I just said that I think they listened to scientists, that the UN report was based on conversations looking at scientific data.
Charlie,
and that scientists were involved. That's all I was making.
Here's the way to think about this.
It was on the front page of the. I mean, every paper in the world had it huge on the front page.
4 weeks in advance.
Yeah.
Okay. Question number one. You've released the summary.
You don't like the UN report. You don't like Al Gore's report. You don't like anybody who doesn't come to the conclusion. I don't mean personally. Because you think they're intellectually wrong.
I do. Yes, I do.
You think they're intellectually wrong.
I do.
You don't think they've looked at the data. And you think they exaggerate the consequences of global warming.
Somebody asked me the difference between me and Al, and I've wondered about it too. But I think he relies on the expert witness. And I don't. I didn't talk to anybody.
You do the work yourself.
Yes.
And you don't think he does the work himself.
No, I don't think he goes and looks at the data. I do not. And I don't think he makes his own guess, and I don't. I talked to two people, both very eminent, when I was working on the book, and both, they both attacked me subsequently because they were the leading people thinking about this. And I went to them and said, these are my problems. And I didn't get good answers back. But Charlie, the shortest version of this that I have is, I said, okay, we've had half a degree or 0.6 of a degree. It's not a crisis. What is everyone upset about? And the answer is, we're upset about the future. How do you know, because I believe the future is unknowable, how do you know what this is going to be? And their answer is, we have a computer model of global climate. And I say, climate, according to the last UN report, is a coupled, nonlinear, chaotic system. And they say, long-term prediction of climate is not possible. That's what they say. Direct quote. So I'm saying I don't think that a computer model cuts it. I'm not having it.